Hey y'all, I'm Maggie, and you're watching another episode of Suncrest On Demand. Before we go any further, I'm sure someone is watching their first Suncrest On Demand video. I'm super excited that you're here. Help me help you. Text the word Suncrest to 94,000. When you do that, we'll send you a digital gift card directly to your phone for some coffee, simply for getting this far in the video. Now, here's a tip for everyone watching. Make sure you have the Suncrest app. When you use our app, you get insider access to things like past content, upcoming events, stuff to help you, your kids, and your students engage with their faith journey, and much, much more. Actually, if you're looking to take a next step in your own faith journey right now, our app is the best tool to use. You can find the Next Steps button right on the homepage. Take a look right now to sign up for baptism, join a group to find your people here at Suncrest, or join a serving team and make a difference. In our app and on our website, you can also partner with us financially. Your generosity makes a huge difference in Northwest Indiana and beyond through starting new churches. So, on behalf of all of us, thank you for using your finances to change lives. Here's how the rest of this video is going to go. We're going to experience some music. In fact, let us know a lyric you found meaningful in the live chat or comments. We're going to experience communion. Each week we focus on the sacrificial love of Jesus through a simple meal. So, now's the time to gather some food and drink to represent Jesus' body and blood. After the song is done, I'm going to put up a timer on the screen. Feel free to eat and drink when you are ready. After communion is done, we'll listen to this week's message. Once that's done, let us know something meaningful you heard in the live chat or comments. Let's get going.
I'll follow where your spirit leads. Broken as my life may be, I will give you every piece. I hear you call. I am available. I say yes, Lord. I am available. Here I am with open hands, counting on your grace again. Less of me and more of you. I just wanna see you move. I hear you call. I am available. I say yes, Lord. I am as a sacrifice. Oh, use me how you want to, God. Have your throne within my heart. I hear you call. I am available. I say yes, Lord. I am available.
So I want to start today with a quick story, but first a quick question. And on this quick question, I need everyone to participate by a show of hands, okay? So very simple question. How many of you have ever driven through a road closed sign? How many of you have ever driven through a road closed sign? I want you to think back through your whole life. If you've ever done this at all, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. How many of you have ever driven through a road closed sign? So I am absolutely perplexed. You can put your hands down that some of you didn't put your hand up. Right? Like you could go your whole life and never go around a road closed sign. For those of us who regularly go around road closed signs, I know I'm part of a good community here, right? Like there's some next questions after that, of course, which is, one of them is, so have you ever found that the road wasn't actually closed? Yes, totally. Which actually doesn't reinforce me wanting to stop at the next road closed sign, right? When you go around the road closed, have you ever found that the road is closed? Well, of course you have. That's why the sign is there. Actually, maybe the most interesting question to me is, have any of you ever gone around a road closed sign and done it at full speed? Like you didn't slow down, you're just like, I don't believe them one bit. I'm just going for it. There are people who have done that. I don't think most of them would be sitting here tonight because they'd be dead, right? So this is a very interesting thing to me about what happens in our minds when we see something that has a warning that gets our attention, and whether we at least slow down or do we entirely stop. Now a story that comes to the same idea, a little different angle. I was thinking back to decisions that I've made in my life. We're talking about the decisions we make and regrets and questions we're asking. And one of the most interesting decisions that I kind of reflect on in my life was my decision on where to go for college. There were a number of options kind of available early on, but I had narrowed it down to two different schools. Now, I am from rural central Illinois, small town, no stoplight in my hometown. That's the area that I grew up in. And the two colleges that I felt like it was definitely going to be one of these two. One of them was also in rural central Illinois. It was in Lincoln, so there was at least stoplights there, but one of them was there. The other one was in St. Louis. And I got to tell you, what happened in my experience of kind of exploring these two schools is that all the things started to line up on the St. Louis side of things. I mean, first of all, it's St. Louis, right? There's going to be winning baseball in St. Louis. Actually, for me, it was just the idea of going to the city, right? Going to somewhere that's different than where I had grown up. On top of that, one of my very best friends from high school was already going to college at this school in St. Louis. The day I went to visit the school in St. Louis, it was just one of those days where it's beautiful, it's 75 degrees, the birds are singing, the sun is out, like you couldn't have planned it more perfectly. And on top of that, this school in St. Louis offered me an incredible scholarship. They offered me a full ride scholarship for my first year and the chance, which I thought was possible, for me to earn that every year afterwards. And I'm a logical person, right? So when you step back, you look at this situation, you're like, okay, there's a school in Lincoln, Illinois, and there's a school in St. Louis, and I have all these things going. Everything was lining up on this one side. But I didn't end up going to that school. And a lot of times I've asked myself, what was it that caused me to not go there and go to a different school? And actually, I find myself, do you ever do this? When you're telling the story about something, you don't tell the same story every time. And I remember a little bit of like, I think my dad said something to me that made me think that he thought the other school was a better option. I remember just being a little unsettled that even though everything was lining up, almost maybe it was too good to be true. And then I actually, and this does not happen to me often, I think it's actually the only time it's ever happened to me. I had a dream one night, and it wasn't a dream from God that said, go to Lincoln. It didn't work that way. But when I woke up the next day in ways that I couldn't explain, I had this very real sense that this was a direction that I needed to go. And of course, these kind of decisions in my life, the kind of decisions in your life, they are consequential in ways that you cannot really measure. I mean, this I'm completely sure of. If I had gone to St. Louis, I would not be standing here today. The person that I met that asked me to come and serve at this church, I met because he was teaching at Lincoln. And it's just a story to cause you to say, oh, how is it that we actually make decisions? What should we pay attention to? And let's remember, decisions that may or may not seem consequential at the time have such significant power in setting the course of our lives. So with that in mind, let me go back to the basics of this whole series. I've told you this every week. Good questions lead to good decisions, and good decisions lead to a good life. And when you think about a good life, I think the way all of us, we could just all agree on this. A good life for you, it goes something like this. The most important part of my life, I got it right. The most important part of my life, I got it right. You can get lots of other things wrong. You get the most important part of your life. And this is why I say this is probably different for followers of Jesus than if you're not a follower of Jesus. If you're a follower of Jesus, the most important part of your life is to honor God and serve Him. And that lines up with a lot of other values that we love about loving our families and things like that. That's most important. If the most important part of your life is something else, then the most important part, that's a good life. The way that you get there is you make good decisions. And those good decisions are essentially the steering wheel. You can turn left or right. I've been saying you can go forward or backwards. And actually this week is actually the sense that maybe at certain points in your life, the right thing to do is to stop and think about backing up. I was thinking, what's the motion for this? And the old motion was this, right? Now it's just like this. Yeah, there it is, right there. That's the steering wheel. That's the decision. But what leads to these good decisions? Well, you have to ask the right questions to get to the good decisions. Now, the proverb that we've been looking at, maybe you've memorized this by now, says the prudent see danger and they take refuge. The prudent stop at road closed signs. But the simple, they keep going and they pay the penalty. And if you keep going without even tapping the brakes, without slowing down at all, man, danger could be in store. So the first week, we asked question about honesty. Am I being honest with myself, really? Last week, we asked a question about your legacy. What story is my life writing? And today, we're going to explore the conscience question. And the conscience question is this: what tension deserves my attention? And I'm not sure whether I'm going to clarify something for you today or confuse something for you today. I just want to say that out loud at the beginning here. But this idea that things prompt you, something gets your attention, something's unsettled inside of you, something is, I've heard, this is probably an older church thing, people say, I had a check in my spirit. That we absolutely ought to pay attention. When life seems to be going this way, my desire is for life to go this way, maybe even the pros and cons are lining up this way, but something has created a tension, and I need to let it get my attention. Now, I'm using the word conscience here, and one of the fun conversations for me over the first few weeks of this series is, I had people come up to me after week 1 where we said, the heart is deceitful above all things. Who can cure it? And it's like, well, it doesn't seem like Greg wants you to follow your heart. Well, if your heart's deceitful, you wouldn't want to follow that. What about our head? Are these just logical decisions? But then sometimes you talk pros and cons, and you're like, well, that's not quite the. So if you're not going to follow your head and you're not going to follow your heart, what are you supposed to follow, Greg? And my short answer to that is your conscience. Now, conscience is actually a very interesting thing because whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, we all understand conscience. I think you could probably even agree with me that there's a sense of right and wrong that has been placed inside of you, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not. And there is something inside of you, maybe unexplainable to you, that will kind of trip you when you're going a wrong direction. For the follower of Jesus, the promise of God is that you have received the Holy Spirit. This is actually what makes essentially a new you, to be born again, to live life in a different dimension. And this Holy Spirit, when it comes to your conscience, is actually something that is almost like a fine-tuned conscience. It has precision to it. It might even it causes the promptings to be a little more significant so that you feel them. One of the ways the scriptures talk about the Holy Spirit, God himself living inside of us as a follower of Jesus, is that it convicts us. That if you're going down a path and it's a path where you should either stop because there's a warning, or maybe you're going down a path and it's like, actually the opportunity's over here. That can prompt you, that can convict you. And I want you today to pay attention to this internal warning system, to this thing that will prompt you when you should pause and maybe go another direction, either to avoid danger or to maximize an opportunity that I believe God himself has placed in front of you. Now, that conscience, that conviction from the Holy Spirit actually plays this very critical role in our lives because of something else that is hardwired into us. And this is my best way to explain it. Our appetites pose a threat to having no regret. Like if I'm asking you 5 questions to avoid regrets, one of the things that we have to pay attention to is that we all have appetites. We're all driven by certain things. And when we continue to try to fulfill those appetites, that they at least pose a threat that if all you do is fulfill your appetite, you could end up with regret. And your conscience, or the prompting of the Spirit, is actually one of the things that's trying to help you regulate that appetite. Now, when I say appetite, of course, the first thing our minds all go to is food, right? It's actually a really good example of an appetite. It's something that you constantly need. You're actually never fully or finally satisfied with your hunger. You're temporarily satisfied and then you want some more. But we all know we have appetites that go far beyond food. Probably the one that comes to mind next is sex, right? There's an appetite for that. Different people have different amounts of appetites, but you've seen people ruin their lives because they cannot control or stop that prompting of that appetite. But even food and sex are far from the only 2 appetites. Let me give you a list. You'll probably find your appetite on here. People have an appetite for being accepted. People have an appetite for intimacy or a feeling of closeness with someone else. People have an appetite for respect. People have an appetite for recognition. People have an appetite for fame. People have an appetite for progress, who want things to keep moving forward. Some people have an appetite to be envied. That's actually what you kind of aim at in your life. You're like, I just kind of want to be a person who other people would look at and they'd be envious of that. People have an appetite for stuff, and by stuff, I mean more stuff or new stuff or shiny stuff or just shoes. Maybe it's shoes for you. I don't know. People have an appetite for pleasure, for achievement, for winning, for responsibility. Now, when you look at these appetites, I don't know how this list hits you, but let me name kind of 3 quick things that are true of all appetites to help us understand this thing that drives us in life. God created them. Those weren't evil. Food isn't evil. Sex isn't evil. These are things God created. The challenge is that sin itself distorts them. So these appetites in and of themselves, most of them are fine. But when they get distorted and we use them in ungodly ways, it goes wrong. Also, they are never satisfied. This is a very important thing to just become aware of with all of your appetites. You will strive to satisfy it. You might temporarily feel full, but that feeling is fleeting, and you will need the next hit, the next thing. You will need it again, even though you tell yourself you don't. Appetites are almost always described with a single word, and the word is more. More. And if you go through life with any sense of discontentment, I'm not content. I'm not happy with how life is right now. I wish it were different. I need this. I want that. Then you are very familiar with the idea that appetites are never satisfied. They're insatiable. And they always whisper, now. Your appetites never say, you know what, maybe later. Your appetites never say, you know what, you can do that tomorrow. Appetites never say that. And so these appetites, which could be godly but also distorted, they start to drive our lives, and unless we pay attention to the tension that pops up, we will follow these paths and oftentimes live with regret. Now, I'm going to tell you 2 quick Bible stories, actually one really quick and one a little bit longer. So this past summer, if you were with us, we went through the whole story of the life of David, and this just really struck me this week. If you were with us on this particular week, you know that part of the story of the life of David is that as a young man, it was known that he was going to be the next king, but he wasn't king yet. And there was this one particular occasion where he and all of his buddies, all of his followers, all of his fighting men were hiding in a cave, and the current king, Saul, came into the cave actually to go to the bathroom, to relieve himself. And David was in the perfect position to take out Saul and just announce himself as king. It was almost like God put him there. In fact, David's fighting men were telling David, read the situation, David. Doesn't it seem like God gave you the chance right here to take him out and be the next king? But David didn't do it. And here's actually what the line says. David was conscience-stricken. Even when everything was kind of lining up, even when he knew what his future was going to be, and it looked like this was the opportunity for the future, even when David wanted the power of being king, and maybe even with good intentions, say, I can make this world a better place, with all of that going on, there was something. There was a tension inside of David, in his spirit, in his conscience, that said, whoa. And if you're going to make good decisions, every time you sense a prompting, you should say, whoa. David actually says he was conscience-stricken. It says he said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do such a thing. But rewind from David's story, there's actually a fascinating story of 2 brothers early on in the Old Covenant. These 2 brothers are named Jacob and Esau. And it's kind of interesting. You always hear them described in that order, Jacob and Esau. And it's unusual because Esau was the older brother. And almost always you would name the older brother first and then the younger brother. But we always refer to them as Jacob and Esau. And the reason for that, I think, has help for us today to see how life really plays out. Here's how the story gets set up in the book of Genesis. It says, the boys grew up, and Esau, the older brother, became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. So Esau went out, hunter, all that stuff. Jacob, kind of a homebody. Isaac, this is dad, who had a taste for wild game, liked the hunter. He loved Esau. But Rebekah, the mom, loved Jacob. Now, there was something going on in this culture that we have no correlating idea to in our culture at all today. It was the idea of a birthright. And the whole idea behind a birthright is that the firstborn son would be given the birthright, and it came with certain privileges. Those of you who are firstborn sons, you probably wish this continued today. The rest of us are glad that it doesn't. The birthright meant this. It meant, first of all, you'd get a double portion of the inheritance. Everyone else would get their slice. You would get double what every other child got when it came to the inheritance. You actually had a position as the oldest child to have a judicial authority. What it meant was when there were disputes in your family, this is your kids, your grandkids, cousins, aunts, and uncles, you had the position of judicial authority, which meant you got to decide in family disputes. It was a position of power. And the birthright meant that you would receive a special blessing from your father, and it was almost perceived to be a special blessing from the heavenly Father, from God himself. So this birthright was very valuable. It held your future. So Jacob and Esau, two different guys, one dad liked, one mom liked. It's interesting. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, because that's what Jacob did, he was hanging out at home, Esau came in from the open country famished. Famished. Now, famished is a dramatic word, but I want you to see what's going on in this story because there's going to be a tension here where Esau wants to have his appetite fulfilled, and it's actually in the context of being famished. He was weary. He was tired. You might say he was hangry. And he said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." Now, let me show you a word here. This word quick is the word of appetites. I can't wait. I can't wait another day. I don't want this tomorrow. I don't want it later. I need it, and I need it now. Now, some of you are younger siblings, as I am, a middle child. And one of the things you know if you're a younger sibling is that many, many times it seems like the firstborn kind of gets his way, gets the privilege, gets to do things, all that. Like we kind of look at it that way. But every now and then, as you're growing up, you find yourself uniquely in a position of leverage against your older brother or older sister. In my house, it went something like this. "Hey, Tim, so you don't want mom and dad to know that you came in late last night? You would rather they not find out about that? Isn't it interesting that I know that? They don't yet know that. And you don't want them to know that. Hey, Tim, this is the question. What's it worth to you? What's it worth to you?" And we start a negotiation. And when we were younger, it probably had to do with toys, and when we were older, it probably had to do with cars. And what's it worth to you? Every younger sibling who's ever felt this leveraged position probably also resonates with this. Like, it's a negotiation, and if you're a smart negotiator, you start high, right? Go big or go home. So, Jacob is making some stew. Esau comes and says, "I'm famished. Give me some of that stew." And Jacob replied, "Well, first, sell me your birthright. You want a bowl of soup? I'll trade you for your birthright." And I just heard somebody over here laugh, which I think is the exact right response. In what world would you sell your whole future just to have a feeling satisfied? In what world would you trade your birthright for a bowl of soup? In what world would you, just because you want to fulfill an appetite, trade your self-respect? In what situation would you, just because you want to have a certain feeling temporarily that feels really strong right now, trade your marriage and your family? In what world, in order to gain a short-term financial gain, would you potentially cost yourself your whole professional career? Who in the world would do something like that? Well, you might think the answer is nobody. But I'm a pastor, and I promise you, the answer is everybody. Everybody, when they're famished, when they're tired, when the urge is there, when the feeling is, I'm not happy, when they need something, and they need it now. All the time, people do not stop and listen to the prompting. Do not stop and let their conscience be their guide, but instead just blaze right through it. And they mess up their life. Look, I'm about to die, said Esau. He's a little dramatic. He was not about to die. He just came in from the field. He was hungry. But he asked this question, what if I'm about to die? What good is the birthright to me? I mean, the birthright, it's no good right now. I mean, Dad's still alive. I don't get the inheritance until he dies. You know what? I'm hungry. I have an appetite. It needs fulfilled. But Jacob said, swear to me first. And he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. That's crazy. But some of you have watched your children make these kind of decisions. And some of your parents have watched you make these kind of decisions. And sometimes your pastor watches you make these kind of decisions. And the saddest part is, once you make decisions like this, the situation is irretrievable. Esau could not go back and get his birthright. It's not unforgivable. It doesn't mean you're a lost cause, especially with God. But it does mean the world will not be the way that it was. So, then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some little stew. He's like, give me the birthright, I'll give you some bread too. And he ate and he drank, and then he got up and left. The stew was gone, and the birthright was gone. And it's so interesting to me, it says, so Esau despised his birthright. He actually did what almost everybody does after they make a dumb decision, after they didn't pause and let their conscience get their attention. He actually starts to create a storyline in his head that goes something like this. I never wanted that anyway. Well, it was probably going to happen anyway. I mean, how many times do I hear, maybe I should say it this way. How many times have I said something that justifies the outcome, that acts like I don't care? But the reason I'm doing it is it's too late to care. This is heavy stuff. So, what's this look like in our lives? I think step one is just this. Don't dismiss. Whatever you do, step one is when the prompting comes, when the conscience strikes you, when something happens, don't dismiss. Let it bother you. Let it get your attention. Let the tension have your attention. And I have images that I use with people. Maybe this will be helpful to you. Just as you're going through real life and going through your day, sometimes it doesn't seem like you're going through life, and it's almost like there's a speed bump in life. Like it didn't stop you, but it's like, What was that? I mean, you could be going through the line at the grocery store. You could be at the gas pump. You could be driving your child to school. You could be in the middle of a conversation, and it just catches you. It gets your attention. And I'm telling you, whenever something gets your attention like that, give it your attention. Don't dismiss it. Sometimes it's not a speed bump, it's a brick wall. Like you run into a situation in life. You see the road closed sign, and it's right there, and you have to stop. But maybe you sit up in bed. You're like, what was that? But I can't tell you how many people sit up in bed. What was that? And they're like, yeah, I can shake that off. And they lay back down and go back to sleep. Sometimes you see a situation in your life, and it's almost like you see yourself in a mirror. You're like, is that me? And whenever that happens, I want you to pay attention. One of the images that we use around here all the time for how to live your life is this big circle. And I'm not going to spend time on the whole circle today. I just want to spend time on this arrow, because this arrow is your life. And as you go through your life, it's the most spiritual way that I know to live, is that as you're going through life, when things get your attention, you stop and you let them shape you. I was thinking about a lot of places where I think this probably hits your life, or I've seen it hit other people's lives. It probably won't surprise you to know that my whole approach to creating messages that you try to listen to every week is I want to create attention that you have to pay attention to. I think if you're in person at this service with us, and just a little while you sang the words, God, I am available. But when you sing those words, you're like, actually, I'm not God. There's lots of parts of my life that are off limits to you. There's things with my time and my money and my kids. That should get your attention. When someone tries to correct you and you get defensive, when someone says, is that really a good financial decision? Or aren't you on a diet? Or whatever. And you tend to get defensive, you should instead just let that get your attention. A number of years ago, my father passed away in the summer. And then that December, I took a trip with my two brothers to go skiing in Colorado. And kind of the idea behind the trip was, we were going to kind of talk through what Dad meant to us and how we wanted to set the course of our lives. And I noticed that between the summer when my dad died and December when we were on this trip, that my older brother, he had gotten into shape. And we were talking about it. And he said, listen, Dad died young. He was in his 60s. He didn't even get to know all of his grandchildren. I don't want that to be the story of my life. And I respect my brother so much because something got his attention and he paid attention to it and it reset the course of his life. I heard a story just months ago about a lady in our church who has a family member who literally lives on a different continent, but this family member is sick and dying, and this family member is not a follower of Jesus. And something prompted her in her spirit to say, that's your family member. You love her. I know it sounds crazy to get on a plane and fly to a different continent so that you can have a conversation with someone about their eternity before they die, but it prompted her. And she got on the plane and she flew there, and her family member stepped into a relationship with Christ. And I think we all, as our life is going like this, should pay attention when something stops us, when we feel something, when our conscience strikes us, when we're convicted by the Spirit, however you want to describe it. And if you live your life this way, that has an awareness that God's wanting to intervene and interrupt your plans, you can live the most beautiful spiritual life that there is. So I've been asking you to stand in front of a mirror each week. Actually, this week, I'm going to ask you to stand in front of the mirror at the end of every day and just say, what got my attention today? What got my attention today? Man, I flew off the handle at my son. What is going on inside of me? Whatever it is. At the end of every day, this is the spiritual life, to say, God, where were you getting my attention today? And then this is how to decide. When you are prompted, you just make the commitment. I'll explore that a little bit. I will not ignore it. I will not click the X. I will not dismiss it. I will not swipe it off. I will take this thing that hit my conscience or God's Spirit prompted, and I'll explore it. And it might be a little thing in your day, or it might be a big thing that changes the trajectory of your life. But I want you to live every day saying, I wonder where that came from. And what if it was God telling me to pause before I just keep going and pay the penalty?
Before you turn off this video, hit the like, subscribe, and share buttons. We'll see you next week, same time, same channel, and until then, go and be the church. All right.